Okay, so good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this video. This is the journalism workshop for pup training. Specifically, this section will cover how to cover news, how you should be writing your news stories. This is going to be very similar to the features, arts, opinions. At the beginning, we're going to talk about the lead. We're going to talk about supporting details. We're going to talk about structure. Um, and that is the general idea when it comes to writing these stories. You will, as pups, each be covering a news, a feature, probably a arts piece, an opinion, and when they are more consistent and they're back fully, some type of sports article as well. So, like I said, let's start with the section on news. So news is not that difficult to figure out here. Um, so what we want to cover first, or what we want to really focus on, of course, is when you're out doing a news story, you want to get as much information as possible. So, if there's a couple of tenets that we want to look at, the first thing, this is before, let me make that note here. Uh, there is a couple of sections here. So before writing anything, okay. So we want to definitely, gather enough information. And what does that mean? You want to focus on research, and now research can be done before the event, if you're going to an event, interview, that kind of thing, before an event or an interview. And two, after, obviously, after the event or interview. Um, and that can be done one of two ways here. You can always, pardon me, it can go before, if you're covering an event that has to do with X, Y, or Z. You would want to go to their website. If it's some kind of workshop, you want to talk to the people that are going to be involved beforehand, any of the coordinators, get names, information like that. So in this research, you want to definitely get the following stuff as you're working on the research at first. Try to see if you can find names and titles of anyone that's going to be there. Typically, this can be done a couple of days before the event. If the event is on the spot, like you just found out, make sure to make it a priority to ask for a name and a title, either as before the meeting or the event actually happens, or right after, so you get that information as accurately as possible. Other information you want to get is definitely dates, if there are dates that are involved. Both of these things are pretty important when covering any kind of news story. After the event, or after you attend the meeting, or after you kind of have been a part of the news story, not a part, pardon me, being there for the news story, is you want to confirm any details that you may be fuzzy on, or confirm any details that maybe were not expanded on. This can be done by emailing those involved. So if you are covering an event on campus, email the people that you spoke to originally. Say, what, I heard this. I just want to make sure that this is correct. I heard this date. This person was named so and so. Is that correct? Is that how you spell their name? That kind of deal. You can email them, or you can call them as well. That's another option. I know right now calling those involved. I know right now not a lot of people on campus, not a lot of people are on campus, so it may be hard to find a lot of these people, individuals, when it comes to getting in contact with them. So good. So you've done the initial, and I've already started thinking about the afterwards. So when you're at the event itself, some of the things you really want to look into or look at very critically are, you know, just listen to the entire the entire bunch of information that you're going to be getting, and just, you know, make sure to write plenty of notes. That's very important. You have to write plenty of notes. This could mean, you know, writing about what each individual says, any kind of data or facts and figures that are used. Make sure to write these notes, take these notes down quickly and carefully, so that you know exactly what is being talked about and is being mentioned in the at whatever news thing that you're covering. So you got your information, you got your research, you took notes, you're pretty prepped to go. As a backup, you can, you know, if you need it, you know, record. A lot of our phones can record audio now, so record the audio. Don't use this as your primary source of information. Make sure you take notes. Your notes are on the spot, and you can kind of even add in, you know, the way the way it's said, the way that people look. That's very important to take into account as well. Someone can say something very positive, but have a look on their face where they're not sure. So you may want to follow up that with a question. And talking about follow-up questions, that's where this next part comes. If you're given the opportunity at the event or after any speeches are done, make sure to write up some follow-up questions. As you're listening, write up some follow-up questions. You say, hey, you know, oh, they said that the car is going to be blue, but they didn't mention what kind of car. That's a follow-up question. Make note of these as the event is going on, or as the you know, during the actual event, conference, interview, whatever, etc. Or looking over your notes at the time, looking over your notes as well. And how can you denote this? Oftentimes, you know, what can be done, or what I've done in the past, is I'll put, you know, I'll use a symbol or something, you know, to denote questions. Oftentimes I'll use either an asterisk, or I'll write like double question marks, like, what does this mean? You know? Awesome. So now, continuing on covering the news. So that's before writing. So when you're going to write, remember that we want to focus on, and we want to follow something that we call the inverted pyramid, right? Now, if you've come and spoken to me about a story, then you probably already know about this, but the most important stuff always goes to the top. This is your lead. So this section here is your lead and most important piece of information, right? That's going to go first. That's your lead. That's the main thing you need to look at, right? That is the important thing about this, right? So from there, kind of the body of your article. These are kind of going to be. Let me erase this. It's ugly. So the rest of this should contain supporting information, and facts, and any kind of details that would further explain what the lead is and what's covering. At the bottom here, this is kind of I mean, I don't want to label it that way, like a throwaway, but this is mostly this is the least important information. It's also where we tend to put contact info, if it's if it's needed for groups, for services, that kind of deal. That's where typically the contact info is. Websites will sometimes pop up in somewhere in the writing if they are specified to that topic that you're actually focused on in that paragraph or that section. So when we're talking about leads, if you've paid attention to the professor, if you've been reading the book, you'll know leads. This is basically most important thing about your story. Now, this doesn't mean there's a difference here. For example, you may be covering a what are some of the meetings that we've had recently? For example, we've had a couple of equity workshops on campus, right? Now, typically, an equity workshop will talk about a couple of things, right? And I'm just gonna spitball here. I'm not gonna write this part down. Just please listen here. So an equity workshop will talk about the need for more equitable resources on campus, the need for more equitable locations on campus or representation on campus. Each event that you attend or each place that you go to gather this information for a needs piece will be a bit different. So you have to keep your ear and your eye open on what they are really hammering home. We've had in the past where students will where we'll have a reporter attend a meeting, and they'll come back and they'll say, hey, you know what, the meeting was a general meeting for ASU. Okay, that's great, but that can't be your lead, because that is what we would call, for example, a event lead. This is a no-no. Okay, this is a no-no. We don't want this. We do not want an event lead. An event lead, an example of one would be, this event took place on this day at this place. Okay? That's what an event lead basically boils down to. You're telling me something happened someday, somewhere. That's not what we want for a lead. What we want, again, what we want is well, first of all, we don't want that. Okay? This is what we do want. This is not what we want. We don't want this. We want for example, let's say again, using an equity workshop as an example here, okay? Using the equity workshop as an example, we want to say something akin to, or let's say something was talked about that's specified on creating an equitable and safe area for people of color in on campus, somewhere within the student services area. So let's say that's something that they're planning on doing. So, for example, and again, this is kind of generic, but you could say something, for example, like an equitable, oops, I don't know how to spell apparently. Equitable, an equitable room is an equitable room has no, not has, pardon me. We want to keep this present. We don't want to put in too much in the past, unless it's already happened, of course. But let's say let's say this is something that's gonna happen. An equitable room is being created for students of minority descent in the East Los Angeles College Student Services area, or department. I guess it would be department. So that would be your lead. Yes, they were talking about equity. Yes, they were talking about how the different ways that is being created, or different ways equity needs to be created. But let's say one of the main things they talked about was the fact that there is going to be an equitable room where everyone is equal in the student service area. That would be your big push. Now you would still, again, going back up here to the pyramid, this would be what you would call our lead and most important information right here, right? But the details and everything else that come after it, where you talk about how it's being built, or whether or not it's being set aside, you talk about other things that are important to the workshop itself. For example, one of the reasons that it's being put together is because there's not enough equality in certain areas, or certain classes, or certain departments. All of that would go in the supporting information, facts, and details that come in these sections here of the pyramid, the two middle sections, for example, on my drawing. The last piece of information might be, for example, if there will be what kind of settings they're going to have inside. Will they have tables? Will they have computers? All that stuff will be coming towards the end, especially if it's not something that is super important. Like, if they're going to have board games, okay, that's cool. But we're talking about the fact that they are building an equitable space for students. So that's your lead. Again, looking for supporting information, looking for facts and details, finding all this information is stuff that you get from the actual event. And like we talked about before, you get from gathering information. Before the event, after the event, okay? So, writing a news piece, this is how it works. There's a lot more detail that can go into it, but again, I kind of wish there were more people here at the event or at the workshop. But there's much more that can be actually done. A lot of it has to do with the fact of interviewing people, and I'll go over that really quickly here. And this will be the last couple pieces that I want to make sure that we put up here. So the last thing we want to do is attribution. This is super important. Over the last couple of months, weeks, years, we kind of have had people who maybe forget that attribution is super important. Attribution is basically saying, how we use it at least, is for this person, whoever you're talking about, this person said this. That's basically what it is. This person said this. This is to say and to denote that the reporter didn't say it, didn't say something. Or, for example, again, especially nowadays in the idea of fake news or whatever, that the reporter didn't make something up. Okay, that's the whole idea behind attribution. How do you get attribution? Very simple. This is when you ask questions to the people in charge and quote them or paraphrase them in your article. So, for example, if someone were to come up to the elect president, whose name escapes me, like President so and so, thank you very much for coming for the meeting. You gave a lot of good information. You talked about the fact that your guys are going to be creating this equitable room. Maybe one of the questions you ask is, just hoping maybe you could clarify a couple of things. Why were equitable? Why did it take so long for an equitable space to be created for students of color or students in minorities? How is the funding coming for this specific room or section that is being created for these for students? You may want to ask, okay, yes, there's a lot of this is made for people of color. It's made specifically for equality. Has there been any kind of notice or have you guys taken into account the feelings of predominantly white or non-people of color who may have an issue with this? And has that been addressed, or are they part and invited to also be a part of this room? These are questions that you want to ask and use as attribution to your article. If there's something you wrote down, a detail that you want to clarify, remember when people are talking, this is stuff that you write down, notes, and you note who says what. It's very important. So if you have 3 people, let's say we have, here's an example of how to keep speakers in check, or not in check, pardon me, speakers identified. Okay, so what you want to do, and this is something again, like I talked about before, something that we can focus on in the research kind of period. But let's say you know that there's going to be a John, there's going to be a Wayne, and there's going to be a Bill at this event. What you may want to do is create a numbered system next to their name, and when they talk, for example, there will be 3 tables, internet access for this workshop. Pardon me, workshop for this. Again, still continuing on this equity workshop on campus. Okay, we're focusing on that for now. Let's say that this equity workshop talked about the fact that, again, there is going to be a where did I write it? Right here, an equitable room that is being created. Okay, I want to try to keep this kind of clear so that we know we're still talking about the same example. And let's say Wayne said this, so you want to write a quick number 2 next to what notes you took. And then let's say, for example, no food, but there are vending machines that are provided. And let's say Bill said that. You want to write a quick number 3. So when you write these things, you would say, and this is how we always write this, okay? Let's say we want to focus on number 2, okay? on what Wayne said. So we would say Wayne whatever, and then we need to know what his title is. Remember, we talked about titles. So let's say he is the VP of Student Services, Vice President of Student Services, comma, said the equity room will have internet accessibility and tables for students. Now I didn't put 3, but as long as you put tables, as long as you can, again, as long as you can attribute to who said it, Wayne whatever, then you're good to go. This is a piece of information that if you had said it, say, well, how do you know? Who told you that? The idea, again, about attribution is to say, I didn't say this, I'm not making this up. Wayne, the vice president of student services, a guy in charge, a guy with power, he said this is what's going to be happening. That's attribution. All right. So, quick recap. Before you write anything, gather your information, take lots of notes while you're at the meeting. Write up follow-up questions and ask them to the people who they would make sense to ask, who are in a position of either power or in a position of having the knowledge and the information that you need. Take their names, titles, all that kind of stuff. That's all very important to have. When you start to write your leads, one of the most important things you're going to have to do. We talked about the lead here. It's the most important thing about your story. You go to an equity workshop. They talk about the fact that the campus needs more equity. They talk about the fact that there needs to be more equity within the classrooms, that students need to ask for equity. But the main thing they talk about is an equitable room being set aside in the student services department. That's your lead. An event lead, again, like we talked about, this event took place on this day at this place. This right here. Right? We don't want this. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Try not. It's going to happen. Try to fight that itch to write an event lead, guys. Sorry, excuse me. Finally, attribution. This is a main thing of how we write our stories, how we get our information. If you have written your entire story and you have not attributed something to someone, you have done it completely incorrectly. And you need to go back and rewrite and find who said what you wrote, because that's who needs to be put there. All right. Juan Calvillo is not a reliable source for a news story. The vice president, the dean, the mayor of, an elected official, spokesperson for, the CEO of, those are all people that we attribute for stories, because those people are the ones where the buck stops with them. Okay? They are the ones that are putting their names on the line for this specific story. Because if we put our names on the line, it doesn't matter. We're just writers, we're reporters. That guy told me this, I'm telling you guys it. That's it. But if you don't put any names, then it's just like me telling them. And what do I know about, how to take care of a electrical substation, or how a cake is being made, or how how and when the equitable room will be open in the student services department in this example that we talked about. All right, I'm gonna stop there. There's so many things more that we can go over when it comes to a news story. This is the bare bones kind of thing. But yeah, take these things into account. Again, I'll go slowly over these pages as I'm talking here in the last couple seconds. So you can write any notes or take a screenshot or whatever. These are all the more important things that we need to cover. Know how to approach a story before you get into it. Really know that when you're writing the story, when you're starting to get things together, that you look at the inverted pyramid, that you really talk about your lead, and pardon me, you go over what you want to write in your lead. Make sure it's not an event lead. Make sure it's a lead that covers what actually was actually the most important thing from that meeting, that event, that news piece, or informational session. Um, Make sure you have attribution. Attribution is super important. You cannot write a news story without having attribution. You are not, sorry to say, you are not the final end all be all on any subject. It is very important. As a reporter, we are not the bosses of anything or the CEOs of anything or the major name of anything. We are reporters. We report what those people say about questions that we have about a situation. All right, I'm going to stop recording here and I'm going to post this as a news workshop. I really wish more people would come to these, but thank you either way. I hope you watch it and this is helpful. Awesome. Thank you so much.